This is a quick video to give an informal overview of the person detail page and kind of how it works and what we're thinking with it. Um, we often, when we're designing, start with the person detail page because it is the most complex page probably in the application. And we figure if we can nail this down and some of the UI concepts here, it'll make it easier on the other pages and they'll kind of take their shape off of this page. So I want to give a quick overview of what this page is, how it works, and what some of the functionality is so that we can then get some design input back before we start putting it into HTML, CSS. So let's start at the top. At the very top, we just have some account information telling you who's logged in and get some account preferences. This search box is kind of a key area. It's kind of our smart search, if you will. You can type in your search criteria here, and by default, it'll search for people. But this will be a drop-down where you can also search for groups. You can search for numerous other different types of data quickly. So it's kind of the smart search features. We've decided to go with, or at least try to go with a horizontal navigation at the top versus in other systems maybe having a vertical on one side, hoping that will give us more real estate down below in the pages. The way these menus will work, they'll look a little bit maybe like this, where it's not just your typical list of links. It has sections, and each section can have multiple items. And we're trying to do this because we know we have limited real estate. We can't make really long lists, and when we go vertically across the top like this, there's only so many that you can fit. Obviously, if you go down or sorry, horizontally across the top like that, there's only some you can fit. If you go vertically down below, you can actually have probably as many as you want. So we know that real estate's a little tight, and so we're trying to make it a little bit denser, yet still hopefully easy to use in this kind of look. After that, you get to the title, the page title bar. So the page title here would actually be the person's name. And then over on this side, we have what we call the badge bar. There's a lot of data points about a person that in current systems might just be text-based, and you might have to go look at a certain number of fields. And we're trying to kind of have the concept now of limiting down what are the major points about a person that you'd want and having like a badge bar. So in this case, we know that this person is what we call an estimated regular attender. It's really easy to tell if someone is or isn't. If they are, it'll be a nice color icon like you see here. And if they're not, it'll probably be just a very light grayed out badge. Here we have another badge that just tells us how many weeks have they attended out of 16. So in this case 14 out of 16. And it should be noted these badges would always be customizable by the church. We'll be giving them a series of badges that they can decide to put into that badge bar, and giving them a framework of creating their own badges. Next is this series of bar graphs. This is again attendance data. Each bar would be a month, and how high it is how many, what percent did they attend in that month. So by looking at this, you can see a good idea of attendance patterns. And this would be family check-in. Right now in other systems you have to actually click on the children to see that. This would kind of combine that all up to a family level and be able to see that. This icon, which obviously needs to be replaced because it's really hard to see, would be if they are serving or not. This would be a DISC test. It's a personality profile we use, and so each bar represents a letter, D-I-S-E, and we kind of see it as you rolled over. It would remind you what those letters were. Again, this would be very specific to what we do. Most churches probably wouldn't have that, but it could be an option. And then over here is our next steps. So starting point baptisms, whether they've taken foundation class 1, 2, 3, 4, whether they're in a neighborhood group, and transformation group. Again, very specific to us, but we, in helping a lot of other churches, we find that they all have these same kind of things. So in some of our helping of churches outside of our role at CCV, we're always putting these types of things together for them, and they have different icons and they mean different things, but a lot of people have latched on to that concept of wanting icons for major attributes about a person, and that's what kind of facilitated the creation of this badge bar at the top. Below that we have some sub pages, trying to break up and keep this initial page really clean. Would be the person detail tab. But if you wanted to get to other extended attributes, there's just a million different attributes that certain ministries want on a person, and they're needed, but at the same time they're not commonly used. We could put them under extended attributes. Information about what groups they're in could then be on a sub page. If you're on staff, you obviously have probably a lot of other attributes that you want to track, and get that on another tab that is less commonly used but still available. Security, that would only be available to certain administrative roles, and each of these tabs would show or not show based on what security rights the logged in person had. Again, contributions, most people wouldn't even see this tab, but if you did have access, you could click there and see a nice contribution breakdown for them. And then history would show everything that's been ever done to that person's record. We found that's really uh, interesting and popular by staff, but it's throughout your day it's rarely used, so we're trying to move it to its own tab and not try to junk up this page. Okay, so then moving over to the left, we have kind of the contact and high level about the person, their picture. This is a following bar. That's a feature where you can follow somebody and it'll remind you about certain dates and times for that person. So in this case, it's showing that this person is not being followed by the logged in user, but that 124 other people in the system are following him. This is another kind of cool concept. If someone, and it's mainly staff and lay volunteers who are following people, at least right now. But if a lot of staff are following a person, that's kind of an interesting note. That means they're really tied in, at least to the staff leadership, and that in of itself is an interesting point. So that's why we're putting that number there. To follow them, you just click on that, and it probably change the color slightly and say unfollow at that point. You can see the member status, what campus they're going to, and in our case, what area. Like this would be what neighborhood. And again, that's customizable. That a lot of churches may or may not see that. And if they're inactive, it would show that in a red. Okay, so then we have some other basic demographic type information: age, gender, and marital status. And below that, we have the family, and we can click on them to go to their page if we wanted to. We're going to try, I think there's some unapproved CSS hacks to create grayscale, and we're going to try to gray those out through CSS, or maybe possibly jQuery, depending on what we can do. Then we just show the contact information, the basic contact information. There are certain icons that if you click on it, like this for instance, would take you to a map of where they live, certain dates, and down here are different documents about the person, and I need to get rid of these icons. We'll probably be going to more of a simple, more gray format like this instead of the colored ones. So coming over to the other side, these would be tags. A lot of times people need to be grouped together, and in the past we've always had to create new tags or groups and then manually add people to these tags or groups. So in this case we're creating more of a real tagging system. So you'd be able to actually edit tags and just type in a tag in an autofill, and you can just quickly, easily add someone to a tag, which would be kind of a grouping of people. We see two types of tags. One would be like an organizational tag that everybody sees, and then hopefully there's a concept too of a personal tag. So me as a certain type of staff person, I could create my own different types of tags and tag people with those, and those would only be viewable by me. Now, one of the key things that we really want to push on is the concept of notes. And really, this is kind of the customer relationship management features. And just right now, notes are there. All the functionality that we, in our current systems, we have this. They're just not treated as first-class data citizens, is kind of how I describe it. They're always kind of relegated to be down on the page, and therefore are not seen as important and not commonly used. So this would kind of show you right up front, here's all the things that have happened to people. There are different types of notes. This would be like a registration, so it'd show that I registered for a Feed My Starving Children event, and also the rest of my family did also. This would just be a regular note that this pastor in this case had lunch with me and talked about a certain topic. We also want to bring in the email data. So whenever you email somebody, it creates that relationship that an email has occurred. Again, this will help us build relationship patterns within the data without having someone specifically telling us that, hey, I know this person. We can infer it from email and phone calls, which is, again, the next one. The system would have a plug-in to specific phone systems to pull in their call detail records and build this relationship. And so we could see that. And then another example of another just regular note. And then down here, you don't even have to click a button. You can just quickly add a note to the record. And down, if you wanted more features or more specifics about the note, you could click on more options, and that would give you the ability to secure your note so only certain people could see it, and a few other attributes about a note that you might want to set. But for the most part, you would just click type in a note, hit add, and you're done. On this side, the far right side, the first area is person attributes. We're calling them key attributes. Probably need a better term for that. Really, what this is as a staff person, I would be able to say, hey, what are the key attributes that in my role I care about a person seeing? And so I could go in and say, hey, I always care about baptism date, how they joined, the last time they gave, and their T-shirt size and their favorite movie. For some reason, these are the ones I use daily. So always show that for every person in the database right here. Again, if you're in finance, you care about different attributes, and instead of forcing them to click into some of these tabs to get what they want, they can just kind of subscribe to those person attributes and always keep them right there. And then here we're showing known relationships. Within the database, we can model and they can describe, hey, I know this person because I invited them, or I'm allowed to check them in, or I can put them in as my parents. We don't get a lot of known relationships simply because people don't tell us a lot about this, and when they do, we often forget to add the relationships. But there are some in there, and especially a lot of them relate to check-in. And then down here we have implied relationships. And implied relationships is like, hey, we see these people are in the same groups, we see they're in the same serving areas, we see that they perhaps call each other if they're staff, or email each other if they're staff. And so we're creating this implied relationships. This